Chapter 1. The funeral silence. The church smelled faintly of lily and old wood, the kind of scent that clung to both grief and ritual. I stood near the casket, my grandmother's face softened by makeup, her silver hair arranged as though she were only sleeping. But she wasn't. She never would again. Family members filed past me offering the same words. She lived a long life. She's at peace now. Each phrase fell flat, rehearsed, like lines borrowed from a play none of us wanted to be in. I clutched the program in my hand, its edges crumpling from the pressure of my grip. The photo on the cover was one of her in her garden, laughing as though nothing in the world could weigh her down. That was how I wanted to remember her. Not like this quiet, still absent dot as the priest began his sermon. I tried to focus on his voice. He spoke about legacy, about how my grandmother had given everything to her family, how she was a pillar of strength. And I thought, yes, she was. But only I knew the price she paid. She had raised me. When my parents' marriage collapsed, when my father disappeared and my mother fell apart, it was my grandmother who held my hand, packed my school lunches, braided my hair, and told me bedtime stories. She wasn't just a grandmother. She was my anchor, my shelter, the only real parent I had. That was why, when the ceremony ended, I felt hollow in a way words couldn't fill. I stepped outside to catch my breath, the cold air shocking my lungs. And that was when it happened. A man I didn't recognize approached me. Tall, dark coat, eyes that looked haunted. I thought he was just another mourner I hadn't met. But then he leaned in and hugged me. His arms were firm, as though he'd known me all my life. And in a low, broken whisper, he said words that set my world spinning. She raised me too. You just never knew. I froze. My body stiffened. I pulled back and stared at him, heart pounding in my chest. His face was unfamiliar, but his expression carried something undeniable: grief, recognition, truth. What do you mean? I demanded, my voice sharper than I intended, but he only shook his head slightly. Not here. Not now. And with that, he slipped into the crowd, swallowed by black coats and bowed heads before I could stop him. I stood there, trembling, gripping the edge of the bench for balance. My grandmother had raised me. That was my truth, my story. Who was this man to claim the same? Questions swirled in my mind faster than I could catch them. Was he lying? Delusional? Or was there a secret my grandmother had carried to her grave, one she had never shared with me? Inside, the choir began to sing, voices rising in aching harmony. But I didn't move. I couldn't. The letter of grief had just been rewritten into a riddle. And I didn't even know the language it was written in. As the service ended, relatives gathered in the hall, plates of sandwiches and coffee cups in hand. Laughter mixed with tears as people shared their favorite stories of her. But my mind was elsewhere, replaying those 6 words. She raised me too. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering who he was. A forgotten relative? A child she had fostered? A secret son? Every possibility felt like betrayal, not because she owed me every truth, but because I had believed we shared something exclusive. I wasn't just her granddaughter. I was her child, but if he was telling the truth, I wasn't the only one. I had no answers. Just an echo in my ears, and the image of his haunted face burned into my memory. I whispered into the dark, "Grandma, what did you hide from me?" And for the first time in years, silence gave me no comfort. Chapter 2. The man in the black coati woke the next morning with the same words circling my head like vultures. She raised me too. You just never knew. They weren't fading. They weren't a dream. They were stamped into my memory, as real as the dirt that had covered her coffin. I pulled myself from bed, poured a cup of stale coffee, and stared out the window. The world seemed unchanged. Cars rolled by, a woman walked her dog, children shrieked on their way to school. But mine had shifted, bent by a single stranger's whisper. Who was he? And why reveal himself only now? I searched my memory for his face. The sharp jaw, the lined skin, the haunted look in his eyes. He had to be around 40, maybe older. Too young to be her son. Too old to be someone she simply looked after. The funeral program still lay on the counter. I scanned the list of attendees, trying to match names to faces. Nothing. Whoever he wasn't on it. By noon, I found myself in my grandmother's house, the house that had been my second home, now unbearably silent. Dust still clung to the curtains, her reading glasses sat on the table, and her old armchair leaned slightly to one side, as if waiting for her weight. I wandered into her bedroom. Her perfume lingered faintly in the air, lavender and something sweeter. The dresser drawers held her neatly folded clothes, scarves stacked by color. It felt invasive, but I couldn't stop. I wasn't looking for closure. I was looking for him. At the bottom of one drawer, under a pile of sweaters, I found a small tin box. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were photographs. Some I recognized, others I didn't. The first was of me, age 5, holding a birthday cake. My grandmother's smile in the background was wide, proud. The second was of me in middle school, hair awkwardly cut, braces shining. She'd always documented my milestones. But then, a photo I had never seen, a boy, maybe 12, sitting on the porch of her house, his hair shaggy, his eyes serious. My grandmother's arm rested on his shoulder. I froze. The next photo, the same boy, a little older, blowing out candles on a cake. My grandmother beside him, clapping. The next, him in a school uniform, standing awkwardly while she tied his tie. Page after page, picture after picture. A hidden timeline of someone else's childhood. My stomach dropped. He wasn't lying. She had raised him. But why didn't she tell me? I sank onto her bed, photos spilling into my lap. Tears blurred my vision as I held the evidence of a life I'd never known existed. That night, I called my mother. Did you know? I demanded. She sighed, long and heavy. I wondered when this would come. You knew? I suspected, she said. Your grandmother. She always had a soft spot for strays. Children who needed help, families that couldn't manage. She took people in. That's who she was. This wasn't a stray, Mom. He said she raised him. These pictures, my voice cracked. He lived here. With her. With us. And I never knew. She probably wanted to protect you. Protect me from what? From knowing I wasn't the only one she cared about? That I wasn't as special as I thought? Silence. I hated how raw my voice sounded. Childish. But it was true. I had built my identity around being her one. Her chosen. Her child. Now that foundation was cracking. Do you know who he is? I pressed. No, she said firmly. But if he came to the funeral, maybe he wants to be known now. The thought unsettled me. Did I want to know him? Did I want to share her memory with a stranger? That night, I sat at her desk staring at the photographs. The boy's face stared back at me. Older in each one. Familiar somehow. I pulled out the last photo. He was a teenager now, standing next to her in front of a Christmas tree. His expression was softer, almost grateful, and then I saw it. The same jawline. The same haunted eyes. It was him. The man in the black coat. He hadn't just whispered a riddle. He had left proof behind years ago, hidden in the folds of her drawers. My grandmother had raised another child. A boy who had grown into a man, carrying the same grief as me. And now, he had stepped into my life like a ghost demanding recognition. Chapter 3. The confrontation for 2 nights. I dreamed of him. The man in the black coat. Always at the edge of my vision. Always whispering the same words. She raised me too. I couldn't escape it. The photographs sat in a neat stack on my desk, their presence as heavy as the letter I never received. They weren't just proof, they were accusations. Finally, I decided I couldn't live in speculation. I needed answers. I dug through the funeral guest book, tracing names with my finger. No signature matched him. But then I remembered. The back of the program had a smudge of ink, as if someone had written and erased. My grandmother's neighbor had seen him too. Strange man, she had said. Didn't speak to anyone. With every thread I pulled, the picture grew clearer. He hadn't wanted to be seen. But he'd wanted me to know, and he'd wanted me to find him. The photos were my map. On the back of one faint handwriting read, Summer 1997, Parkside Home. I Googled it. A group home. Closed now. But its records were still available in the city archives. By noon. I was standing in a dusty basement office while a clerk in wire glasses flipped through folders. Yes, she muttered. Here we go. Parkside Home, residents between 1995 and 2000. She turned the book toward me. Pages filled with names, ages, case numbers. And there he was. Elias. Age 12. Entered in 1995. Placed under temporary guardianship of Margaret Ellis. My grandmother. The clerk looked up. Are you family? I hesitated. Yes, in a way. The words felt strange on my tongue. That evening, I called the number listed beside his name. It rang twice. Then a man's voice, low and cautious. Hello? It's me, I said, my pulse racing. From the funeral. Silence. Then, I was hoping you'd call. We agreed to meet at a diner halfway between our neighborhoods. When I walked in, he was already there, sitting in a booth with his coat folded neatly beside him. His hair was shorter now, but those same haunted eyes met mine. Thank you for coming, he said. I sat across from him, the vinyl seat cold beneath my legs. You owe me answers. He nodded. I know. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. The waitress came, poured coffee, left us in silence. Finally, I said, start from the beginning. He leaned forward, hands clasped tightly. Your grandmother saved me. That's the beginning. I was 12. My parents? He paused, swallowing hard. My father drank. My mother left. I was put in the system. Group homes, foster families, none of it lasted. Until her, my grandmother? He nodded. She came every week at first. Brought food, books. Then one day she said, come stay with me a while. And I did. I thought it would be a week. It became years. I gripped my coffee cup. Years I never knew about. You were little then, he said. She kept us apart. Not because she didn't love you, but because she didn't want you confused. You were her granddaughter. I was her project, I guess. Project? The word stung. I don't mean it badly, he said quickly. She loved me. She raised me. But she always said you were different. You were blood. She didn't want to blur the lines. My throat tightened. So I was the chosen one. No, he said firmly. We both were. Just in different ways. I shook my head. Why didn't she tell me? Why hide you like some secret chapter? His eyes flickered with pain. Because when I turned 18, I left. I didn't say goodbye. I thought I'd outgrown her. But she never stopped writing to me. Letters, birthday cards. I ignored most of them, until last year when she told me she was sick again. My chest ached. She asked me to come to her funeral. He said softly. She said you'd need to know I existed. That you couldn't carry her memory alone. Tears stung my eyes. So she planned this. In a way. She knew you'd hate me at first. Maybe forever. But she wanted me to try. I sat back, breath shaky. And what do you want? He looked at me, eyes steady now. To share her with you. Not take her away, just to remember her together. Because no one else knows what it was like to be loved by her that way. I swallowed hard. My defenses wavered. For the first time I saw not a stranger. Not a thief of my childhood. But another child she had saved. We sat in silence, sipping cooling coffee. The weight of her memory filling the space between us. For the first time since the funeral. I didn't feel entirely alone. Chapter 4, walking through her footsteps. The next time we met, it wasn't in a diner or over lukewarm coffee. It was in her garden. The house still smelled like lavender and soil, though it had been weeks since she was gone. The air was sharp with late autumn, leaves crunching beneath our shoes as Elias and I stood side by side, staring at the rows of roses she had tended for decades. She used to make me weed this entire row as punishment, Elias said suddenly, his voice tinged with laughter. I glanced at him. Punishment? She made me weed the other side when I got caught skipping class. For the first time, we both laughed. A sound that felt strange, like it didn't belong in this house of silence. But maybe it did. We began walking through the yard, pointing out places where her presence lingered. The bench under the oak tree where she read novels every summer. The chipped bird bath she refused to throw away because the birds don't care about cracks. She told me once, Elias said quietly, that she didn't believe in second chances. She believed in third, fourth, however many it took. That's why she took me in. I nodded, remembering her words in a different form. She always told me, no one is a lost cause. Not even you when you're at your worst. For a moment, the ache in my chest lightened. Inside, we sorted through her belongings. The air smelled of dust and cedar as we opened boxes filled with letters, trinkets, recipes. Look at this, Elias said, holding up a faded apron. She wore this every Sunday when we cooked. I reached out instinctively. She wore it every Christmas Eve too, while making gingerbread. He smiled, always humming carols off key. We both fell silent, realizing we were telling the same story, just from different years. Different angles. It was unsettling and comforting all at once. In her bedroom, Elias opened the top drawer of the dresser. He pulled out a shoebox, carefully lifting the lid. Inside were dozens of envelopes, stacked and neatly labeled. To Elias. To my sunshine. To my brave boy. My heart lurched. She had written him letters too. I picked one up, hands trembling, but stopped. Do you want me to read these? He shook his head. They're yours too. She wanted us both to know. We sat cross-legged on the carpet and began to read. Her words spilled out like she was still speaking to us. Elias, I know you feel like you don't belong anywhere. But here, you belong. Sweetheart, don't let the world convince you that your worth is measured in what you give. You are enough just breathing. To both my children, by blood or by heart, I love you. Tears blurred my vision. I hadn't realized she had addressed us both, as though she'd been preparing us for this, writing us into the same story all along. She called us her children, I whispered. Elias nodded. That's what we were. Later, we sat in the living room. The clock ticked softly on the mantel. The air between us was different now, not charged, not hostile, but fragile. I used to think I was alone, I admitted. That I was the only one she carried. So did I, Elias said. But maybe that's what she wanted. To make us both feel like we were enough. Like we didn't have to share her love. I thought about that for a long moment. It stung less than I expected. Maybe because, sitting beside him, I finally believed it. She'd be happy we're here. I said. She'd be laughing, he replied. Saying, it took my death for you two to meet properly. We both chuckled, and this time the sound felt right. Before leaving, I lingered in her kitchen. The kettle still sat on the stove. Her recipe cards were tucked in their wooden box, edges yellowed with time. She taught me how to make pie here, Elias said softly behind me. She taught me hot chocolate, I replied. We exchanged a glance. For the first time, it wasn't envy I felt. It was connection. That night, as I closed the door behind me, the house didn't feel like it was suffocating me anymore. It felt fuller somehow. Because now the memories weren't just mine to carry. They were ours. Chapter 5. The weight of spring arrived quietly, almost shyly. The first buds bloomed on the trees, and sunlight began stretching longer into the evenings. It was in that season that Elias and I decided to do something my grandmother had always wanted. Host a family gathering in her garden. The one she tended like a second child. We trimmed the hedges, scrubbed the old bird bath, and dusted off the wooden chairs. The roses, stubborn as ever, were already pushing through the soil. She'd be furious if she saw how we let the weeds grow, Elias said, wiping sweat from his forehead. I laughed. She'd say, "Weeds are just plants waiting for a chance to prove themselves." He froze, then smiled. She said the same thing to me once. And just like that, the air felt lighter, as though she was still with us, stitched between our memories. Her voice echoing in different tones, but always the same truth. On the day of the gathering, family filled the garden. My mother came, carrying her cautious smile. Cousins I hadn't seen in years arrived with children of their own. Daniel set up tables with mismatched tablecloths, insisting she'd love it like this. Perfectly imperfect. Elias stood nervously by the gate, unsure if he belonged. I noticed the hesitation in his step, the way he kept tugging at his jacket sleeve. I walked over and touched his arm. "You're part of this too." His eyes softened. "Do you really believe that?" "Yes," I said simply. "Because she believed it first." He nodded, exhaling the tension from his shoulders. After dinner, as the sun dipped low, I asked everyone to gather near the old oak tree. In my hands I held the stack of letters we had found. "She left words for us," I began, my voice trembling. "Not just for me. Not just for Elias, but for all of us." A hush fell over the garden. Even the children seemed to still, their laughter fading into the quiet. I read aloud. "To those I love, I want you to know I never measured life in years. I measured it in moments, in laughter at the dinner table, in tears shared without shame, in the weight of a child's hand in mine. Whether by blood or by chance, family is who we choose to love without condition." My throat caught, but I forced myself to continue. "If you are hearing these words, it means I am gone. But don't let my absence make you small. Fill the table. Share the stories. And for heaven's sake, don't forget to water the roses." Laughter rippled through the crowd at that last line. The tension eased. I lowered the letter, eyes wet. Elias stood beside me, his jaw tight but his expression open. He whispered, "Just for me, she made sure we'd find each other." I nodded. "And she made sure we'd carry her together." Later that night, after everyone left, Elias and I sat on the porch steps. The garden was quiet now, bathed in silver moonlight. "For years," I admitted, "I thought being her favorite made me special. But I think being her child wasn't about exclusivity. It was about responsibility. To carry her love forward." Elias looked down at his hands. "I wasted so many years resenting the world. Maybe if I'd stayed, I wouldn't have lost so much." "You didn't lose her," I said gently. "None of us did. She's here. In this house. In us." He glanced at me, eyes glistening. "Do you really think she'd be proud of us?" I smiled. "I don't think." "I know." We sat in silence. The kind that wasn't empty but full of her voice, her laughter, her presence woven into the fabric of the night. For the first time since the funeral, the hollow ache inside me felt softer. Not gone, but shared. And maybe that was enough. As I looked at Elias beside me, I realized something my grandmother had known all along. Grief doesn't have to divide. It can bind. And love, once planted, grows in more than one garden.